Hey, howdy, and welcome, kids, to Conscious Embodiment Christmas Edition. It is the 25th of December, and we are talking about the week from December 25th through December 23rd. So it is our holiday edition, if you will, because it's Christmas on the first day, and then our final day that we're covering is New Year's Eve day. We are wrapping up the year, right? I love it. Nice and elegant. We wrap up the year. Put it to bed. Oh, my Lord.
Michael, is your yearly astrology video out?
No, not quite. In fact, thanks for the shameless plug opportunity. So
No, well, I was just thinking about that.
I like to do it live on New Year's Day. So that's when it is live, right? So so for those of you who want to spend 2 or 3 hours, probably closer to 3, it's very comprehensive, with me on New Year's Day at 10 a.m. Pacific time, I will be doing my forecast then. The exchange is, I think, $24.99. You get the recording, and you don't have to be there live. The recording will be available forever. And yeah, we're going to talk all about the year to come, so please join me for that. So we have a couple of things to talk about with Mercury's retrograde cycle, but I want to make a note to y'all that I don't have a question for you guys this week because I have moved through all of them. Nice. So I'm putting out the call. If you have questions about astrology, send them to michael@michaellennox.com. I enjoy answering questions, and I thought for a second, well, I could make one up, but I'm not going to do that just because we have the space for the question. I'm not going to always do one if I don't have one. So please send your questions to me. I'm happy to answer them. So we have a couple of things to talk about with Mercury's retrograde. A, this is the final week of his backward motion. And he is backward all week long. He turns around on January 1st. So tomorrow is one of the difficult triple transits of Mercury's cycle. There were 2 difficult ones and 2 very supportive and yummy ones. And this week's difficult transit is a square between Mercury and Neptune. Neptune, we call the Great Spirit. He's our God consciousness, divine consciousness. And that's always the case when a planet is transiting Neptune. We are always having some experience of the unconscious or intuition or flow or guidance or just connecting to powers greater than yourself. But whenever there's hard geometry, especially with a square, which is the air quotes, hardest geometry, the most conflict and obstacle-oriented interactions is the 90-degree square. Neptune's shadow artifact is cloudiness, confusion, and lack of clarity. It's the Mercury retrograde nightmare in a way, right?
I was about to say, when we're, Mercury retrograde, there's a little bit of cloudiness in communication, then throw Neptune on that.
Right. You throw Neptune in it and it just emphasizes it even more strongly. The 2 challenging Mercury retrograde triple transits were a sesqui square with Uranus that hit last week, and then this square to Neptune. Very different Mercury retrograde shenanigans from both. The one from last week, the sesqui square to Uranus, was more showing up in our technology and our digital challenges. And the day that hit, I was listening to NPR radio in the car and heard like someone just go AWOL in the middle of an interview, dead silence. The host goes, Frank, and then there's dead silence, and then there's like a crash, and then there's like oh, whoops, I'm here. It's like, This is the stuff you hear on Zoom calls, not National Public Radio. Right, so that was last week's Mercury retrograde, kerfuffles were more likely to be interruptions, bumps, and digital technology. This is pure confusion, lack of clarity, errors. You want to make sure that as you move through tomorrow and Wednesday and today, you are dotting every I and crossing every T. So certainly just from that perspective, these first couple of days of the week, you want to just respect the cloudiness so that you don't approach anything without double checking check your work. But you might want to look back to November 27th. Very late November is when this first hit. So there could be a thread to late November and something that was in fact confusing or challenging as you were moving through those days that might be up again now, and then this will hit a third time in like January 8th. So if you glance back and see anything thematically that will help you approach what's going on with you this, couple of days today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. Then something happens with Mercury on Wednesday, the 27th, which, since we're talking about Mercury right now, I'll just add this in. It's a conjunction with Mars, not part of the triple transiting, just a day of activation where our words and our embodiment are in alignment. It's an important day for speaking what you want to create. Not like a new moon intentional thing. It's just that when the planet that guides our mind and the planet that guides our bodies are in the same place, then we can expect communication to be driven by speaking into things we want to accomplish. Mercury-Mars conjunction, but they're squaring Neptune, so that means there's like a contradictory energy that comes into our experience Tuesday and Wednesday, right? Where there's a movement, clarity, impulse. I got an idea. Now I'm going to move forward, Mercury, Mars. And then you bump into the wall of clouds and it's like, oh, what was I going to do? Or why was this important? Or did we catch it? So just watch the impulsive desire to act that could be challenged by a mind that's not quite as clear as you need it to be at the beginning of the week. Something to be mindful towards the end of the week is that by the time we get to like Friday, the 29th, Mercury is doing what's called his station. He's at 12 degrees of Sagittarius, right? He started this retrograde from Capricorn and is moving backwards. He will slow down starting on Friday. He will not move Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, which I believe is New Year's Day, if I'm thinking correctly. It doesn't matter. New Year's Day is the day he turns around. But Friday, he's backwards, not moving, and we have a name for this. The communication can be so fucked up during that little squeeze. We call it the storm cycle, right? Mercury's in his storm cycle when he's moving backwards, but not moving and getting ready to turn around. So you can expect befuddled and challenged and Mercury retrograde communication all week long with a theme of confusion at the top of the week and then just the theme of everything challenging in communication because the planet that guides it ain't moving towards the end of the week. And then on January 1st, he turns around, goes direct, and we will talk all about that in next week's episode. So as the podcast launches, the moon is in Gemini. However, tomorrow morning at 7:15 a.m. Pacific time, the moon's going to move from Gemini into Cancer. And a few hours later at 4:33 p.m. Pacific on the 26th, tomorrow, we have our full moon in Cancer. In some ways, this is the most lovely and stable full moon. Like, I'm subject to hyperbole, so what I want to say is this is the loveliest, most stable full moon all year. The fact is, I don't know if that's true or accurate. I would have to look at them all and assess that. But I will just say from an extemporaneous place, there's a lot of stability and balance built into this full moon. And given the fact that, it's just been a year and, the planet is burning up in war and we're terrified of what's coming next. I just like the fact that in this final week of the year that has a full moon in it, that it's just a little bit more stable than it might otherwise be. I welcome that. So we're in the Capricorn mansion as of the winter solstice, summer down under, just 4, 5, 6 days before, 5 days before this full moon. So we're in consideration of goals, ambitions, the mountain of our desires. The avatar of Capricorn is the goat that climbs the mountain. So we are in the mansion where we're captivated with what we want to create and build and make. I love that this is the sign that we cross the threshold of the new year with, right? Because we like to think about this at the end of the old year and the beginning of the new. We consider, what do we want to build in the year to come? And that's natural because that's the sign that we're in when we cross the threshold from one year to the next. So if the moon is in Cancer, the opposite sign from the sign that says, I climb the mountain of my desires, the opposite sensation would be, I rest so that I can climb the mountain of my desires. And truly, Cancer is where we first understood rest and restoration. I mean, in Virgo, we take it to a healing level, right? So Virgo invented the integration process and the body's need for rest. But it is in Cancer where we understood the value of rest and restoration and preparation. This is the mommy-daddy polarity in astrology. Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, is daddy. Cancer, ruled by the moon, is mommy. So in a transcendent third consciousness, which is what we consider in the full moon, that we got the sun in one consciousness, we got the moon in the opposite consciousness, and anytime you have an opposition, you have the potential for a transcendent third, some natural and organic creation that emanates when the two opposite signs that we're talking about force themselves to explode and interact. So when it's daddy and climbing the mountain and mommy and kissing the boo-boo and giving you a sandwich before you go, sort of get in a tussle of an opposition in a full moon, the transcendent third that's created is us in balance between that which we need to create and desire to make and all of the consciousness of care and rest and restoration and sensitivity to others' needs in order for those ambitions to be good and organic and right. It's a full moon of self-care, so we're lifting up and feeling grateful for all the ways that we know how to care for ourselves, and we're releasing any way that we don't care enough for ourselves in order for us to climb the mountain of our desires. I love the idea that there'll be a new moon in Capricorn next month where we really set our intentions for the year ahead. So keep that in mind as we move through tomorrow, because this is the moment where you say, I got to get rid of all that shit that's going to inhibit my ability to climb that mountain next year. So because the moon's in Cancer, it's a good inventory sign. Cancer invented memory. That's why when you date somebody with a Cancer sun, they never forget anything. That's maybe good and that might be bad, but Cancer invented memory. So in that regard, you can also think of this full moon gets us in touch with all of the ways we didn't serve ourselves and didn't care for ourselves and didn't put ourselves first, so that we can use this full moon to release and let go of whatever quality it is that keeps you from self-care. Some people don't care for themselves well enough because they don't feel they don't feel that they deserve it. There's a value problem with some people, right? Other people don't care for themselves because they're too focused on what they want to accomplish, and they're just trying to hit it, and they'll exhaust themselves over identifying too strongly with the ambitions and not enough with what's needed to get there, right? So all of this is filtered into a full moon in Cancer tomorrow. Beautiful, beautiful release that will leave us more in balance with what we need privately, personally, to climb the mountain of our public desires. Where the stability comes from in this full moon that makes it just less bothersome and intense is that Jupiter and Saturn are both directly participating in this new moon geometrically. That's lovely because Jupiter and Saturn are the social planets. As such, their transits reflect things that are happening boots on the ground in our bodies, out and about, connecting with others. Personal planets transits hit us at the personal body level. Outer planets I think of as those transits are reflecting our higher self, guiding us through life. But Saturn and Jupiter are about what's like happening, right there in your little hometown. I like to say Jupiter and Saturn are describing everything from your front door out to the rest of Earth. So you've got Jupiter perfectly placed to be trining the sun and sextiling the moon. That means our conscious awareness sun and our sense of everything that's possible, all the abundance we desire, they're speaking to each other in harmony. So our awareness and what's possible are yummily highlighted in this new moon, a full moon, excuse me. And then because the geometry is perfect, Jupiter's also sextiling the moon, which means that anything that requires our emotional attention right now will go very well and easily because our moon, which is the arbiter of our unconscious, is working really powerfully and productively with our sense of whatever's possible, all the possibilities that Jupiter holds. Meanwhile, Saturn is doing the opposite geometry. Saturn is trining the moon and sextiling the sun. So it's the sort of same setup of what we call the easy opposition. Oppositions are hard, and in this case, it's the opposition of our conscious awareness and our unconscious mind facing off with each other, and that's difficult to do. When our conscious awareness and unconscious are tugging at each other, we're feeling a certain kind of way. So any planet transiting that divides that opposition into two easier parts, we have a name for that. We call it an easy opposition. I just described how Jupiter's doing that, trining the sun and sextiling the moon. Saturn in Pisces is trining the moon and sextiling the sun. You couldn't have asked for a better, more stable participation in this full moon of both the expansion possibilities that I just described. And now Saturn's placement says, any work you got to do to accomplish this, I'm in the room, says the teacher. I will give you the guidance to teach you, show you, help you, learn what you have to learn to climb those mountains more effectively and steep yourself in the self-care that's really necessary. Saturn also likes to reward for jobs well done in the past. So learning and lessons and the way you've attended to your karma this whole year, let's just say, shows up in Saturn touching this full moon as we finish off the year. So then even that stability is present in this full moon, that we are wiser in this last week of the month than we were in the first week because we have followed Saturn's teachings. We've responded to Chiron's healings. And here's a full moon where we get to put the teaching piece, the wisdom piece, into like easy expression on the planet because of the way Saturn is locked in. And the last thing I'll say about it is that it's simply a stable energy, and full moons tend to be discombobulating because of at least I find them so. Like new moons, not so much, but every full moon in my calendar is marked as a day off because I had too many full moons in the past where I woke up and said, shit, I feel moon sick. I can't work today. So I just preemptively take them off in advance. But this full moon, I think, will be one where it's still a full moon, so the energy is going to be intense, but it's going to be stable energetically in a way that I think will help us all have a better holiday week as we are, sort of in contemplation of the end of the year. But really, truly use this full moon, guys, to take a look at anything that you have to let go of or add into your experience in the realm of self care so that you can be the transcendent third that knows how to climb the mountain of your desires, but knows when and how to rest in the in betweens so that you can do all of this more powerfully, gracefully. Yeah. Fabulous full moon for that. We have some very big news in the Venus front, mostly because she's changing signs this week. So on Friday, Venus is going to move out of the sign of her detriment, Scorpio, and into Sagittarius. This is a welcome shift, kids, because I don't know about you, but I have been through the emotional turmoil mill over the last 3.5 weeks with Venus in Scorpio. And I have to tell you, I don't find myself typically quite so sensitive to Venus's moving through Scorpio, at least in the way that I'm familiar with different transits by having paid attention over the years of being an astrologer. But I will tell you, I was feeling the feels in a very big way over the last 3.5 weeks. Partly, I think, because in the middle of her run, she opposed Jupiter, which kind of just gave us a big sort of emotional intensity experience as well. Anyway, so she's wrapping that up. She's in Scorpio still right now, but on Friday, she will move into fiery, mutable Sagittarius. It's a nice place for Venus. She's neutral here. She's not in exaltation or rulership, but she's also not in detriment or fall. So this would be what's called a neutral sign for her. So then we don't have to worry about the little distinctions of what she's like in this sign. We can just go straight to the archetype of Venus is love and intimacy and connection. And Sagittarius is about all the different ways we can do that. So Sagittarius is about, I want a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, a little of that. I've changed my mind now. I want more of that. Lot of desire for stimulation and experience with Venus and Sagittarius. Our feeling bodies will want to feel more, but more likely in the lighter, joyful sort of arena. Scorpio, where Venus is coming out of, is ruled by Pluto. So it's like a visit to the underworld for Venus. But Venus in Sagittarius is like a visit to the county fair. Or something, because it's just all about Jupiter's rulership of this sign. Sort of says we get to have lots of fun and movement and stimulation and joy and delight. So that shift happens on Friday, and Venus stays in a sign for about 3.5 weeks. So for most of January, Venus will be in this mutable fire sign, and our desires for love and intimacy will get a little bit fired up, where we will crave more stimulation than usual. So that's the big news for the end of the week with Venus. But as I've been doing lately, and I will continue to do till Venus returns to Leo when she started her retrograde this past spring, there's a couple of lovely things that Venus is doing right now, and then something to be aware of on Friday, just when she changes signs. So on Thursday of this week, Venus is going to sextile Pluto right before she changes signs. So that means that as we get to Thursday and sort of the day before, a little bit after, there's a depth of passion available for us that should be quite juicy and yummy. Pluto takes us to the underworld. Venus is already in his ruling sign. And so there's a sort of level of depth and intensity and passion that we'll sort of bump into on Thursday. And then boom, Friday, very different story when Venus changes signs midday, and she will bump right into a sesquisquare with Chiron. So this is important for over the weekend, Friday and into the weekend. You may have an experience of a kind of a deep dive into intense emotional places on Thursday, but then Friday and over the weekend bump into the wound. There's an agitation energy. Seska squares just bother, frustration. So Venus changes signs and gets lighter and into a territory where she can have some sort of, breathing room again. And she bumps right into Chiron in a Seska square. That means that as we move through Friday and the weekend, we are in some kind of a new way to approach the healing in our hearts. Healing in our hearts because Chiron is being agitated. New way because Venus is changing signs before she does that connection to Sagittarius. And so something about how we approach writing our emotional bodies and getting us back to center over the weekend will be this driven by fire, not water. Less emotional, more solution-oriented, but we will have some things to talk about emotionally Friday and into the weekend. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. All right. This week we have a dreamer calling in from Virginia. Hey, Dawn, what you dreaming?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. So I work in a church, kind of as a background, and I had this very strange dream, and I never remember my dreams, so it was really startling for me. But I walked into the sanctuary of the
Love that.
church, and there was a pine box at the end, and it was empty. And so I walked over to it, and somehow I knew that I was not well, that I was sick. But I climbed into the box and I laid down, and a nurse came over in a white nurse's uniform with the little hat and the whole thing. And she gave me a shot,
Right.
and I closed my eyes. And I assume I died. I don't know. But the next part of it was very strange because I went to a Marriott hotel, and it was a very fancy hotel. And I had a suitcase, a metal suitcase with my ashes in it. And I gave it to the woman, and she goes, "I will keep it for you." And then another weird part about it was my ex-husband was like in the background, just standing there. He didn't say anything. And then I woke up because it was terrifying.
Oh my Lord. I love, first of all, short,
I
but
know.
sweet, honey. I mean, talk about some depth of imagery. All right. So she said, I'm just been looking at my notes here. I gave her my ashes. I will
Yeah.
keep these for you. And then okay. And the ex-husband was there. Remind me of any affect of him or any way he was like being in the dream that you noticed, or just there.
He was just kind of standing behind me, like he didn't say anything. It was kind of like a presence, like he was
Got
just
it.
there.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about him and your marriage, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How long have you been divorced?
2 years,
So this is for how long were you married?
34 years.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. So, like it or not, he's your life partner,
Oh, I
right?
don't like
I get that, honey, but you spent 34 or, you spent 34 years
Right,
with
right,
him in the same like space as partner. And while divorce may be right and natural and about your integration, right? Like I
right.
want to be really clear when I say this so that I'm speaking to you in two ways. If I speak to you about your waking life, it's like brava, ex-husband, bye, bye.
Yeah,
But if we're in dreamland, and especially with this dream, honey, because this dream's about your life. I mean, honey, right? You didn't
yeah,
get lost in you that this is a dream about dying and sort of being in the inner spaces where you're likely to go into another life. That's what the
right,
hotel is. It's the way station between lives. So
right.
the fact that your husband, ex-husband, is present in the dream to me seems important from that archetypal expression of you in your life that included a partner of many, many decades.
Yeah,
So that's why he's there. So I'm just starting with that to sort of like make you more comfortable with why I'm saying he's there,
right, right.
right? So that we don't have to like look for some other meaning. I think that's why. I think he's
Yeah,
simply there because you spent half your life with him.
right.
Right? Okay. I mean, I'm assuming you're somewhere in close to my age. I just turned 60, so you're
I'm
somewhere.
61.
You're
Yeah,
okay, right. So okay,
yeah.
okay. Okay. So the pine box piece I love because we actually have a collective sociological not assessment, sort of agreement with what that means. It's about the simplicity of death. The idea that we contain bodies and bury them, actually, I hope is something that's just going to go away over time. But for millennia, we've done that in some. I think burning is better, but
I,
in the idea that what we do with bodies is bury them, Pine Box tells us that we're not in consideration of the pomp and circumstances of a death and a passing, because that's for the living. You're perceiving your own coffin as a pine box because we are in the simplicity of I'm in a body, it's temporary, and I'm going to lay it down at some point. We call that death. So in the sanctuary, pine box, and then you crawl into it, honey. You crawl into it because it's yours. But are you getting what I'm saying, though, about the pine box means we're talking about your inner perceptions of your own life's sort of limit and the mortality that's coming.
yeah, I get it.
Even the nurse's uniform and her hat sort of make her very sort of purely archetypal, right? She's not a friend, right? So she's not from your life. She's not like a modern nurse who wear, scrubs with,
Right,
teddy
right,
bears on them or blue or
right.
something. She's a really sort of drawn out caricature of what we think of nurse. If you're 60, right? Because, when we were young, that's what nurses wore. They don't wear them any longer. But I even think that her sort of perfect nursey look tells us that we're in something very simple and fundamental. I'm mortal. And there's a part of consciousness that's going to come in and assist the process of transition. And for whatever reason, you chose nurse as the avatar to represent that. And then you do it. You do the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You get into the box and you say, I accept death.
yeah.
Interestingly, Marriott as a hotel chain interests me. Because on the one hand, you can think of Marriott as a very sort of medium level, not terribly fancy hotel.
Yeah,
But do you know that every major resort city might have a beautiful Marriott in it? Like, so
yeah.
the Marriotts in resort cities are beautiful and lovely, and that
Right,
you might get to a Marriott in Des Moines,
right, right,
because you've got a convention to go to, right. So there's
right.
something interesting to me about that as well, that there's a loftiness to Marriott and a simplicity to Marriott as a brand. And so I think of that as casual thoughts of death would be like the hotel at the lower level, and you are in the transitional between lives. That's why, to me, that's the Marriott that is the resort hotel.
Yeah,
And then, so I add to this that hotels are homes, so they do represent ourselves because we live in them. So houses and apartments are symbols of self, but hotels are symbols of transitory self. It's the self because we don't stay there forever. We go there for short periods of time where, ostensibly something happens. In this case, you prepare to go back into a body. Here,
Oh,
I'll take these ashes. I will keep these for you. So
yeah.
to me, there's something about that place, that space, that Marriott, which I'm interpreting as the way station between lives, that which you interact with, this sort of nurse character who's got all of this taken care of, is also responsible for like giving you back a body to go back. I mean, I'm making all of this up, right? I'm adding my third act of the dream,
Yeah.
right? But it starts with the idea that your body is temporary and it's given to us by spirit.
Yes.
And therefore it's taken back by spirit. I'll keep that for you because you don't need it anymore.
Yeah, I like it.
I love this dream, Dawn. Thank you so much for bringing
Well,
it.
thank you. I never, like I said, I never remember my dreams, and this was just a doozy. So
even better that you are a listener of the podcast, don't typically remember, and so therefore made the effort to reach out and call. That elevates it for me as well. And then it's just, I think we're in a fun little special, Christmas, New Year's podcast episode, right? Where we're just past the solstice, so we're all still in that darkest time where we have to find the light within. And that we honor the holidays that carry us across the threshold of the new year. And so you bring us a dream that reminds us this is temporary.
Yeah.
And when we know that, I think we have a richer, more passionate experience of being here.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Dawn.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.